Good day, good day, good day, everybody. In California, this is Yin Yang having a time of her life, giving you 1,724 episodes of Morsels of a Thought of Wisdom. Hopefully, that we all know the right things to do because knowing the right things to do is a form of wisdom. Actually going and doing it with the magical action creates virtue. So we are making more virtue appear in the world just by doing morsels of a thought of wisdom, doing the right things to do. Okay. So we are reading from people who have wisdom. We are reading from Lunar Legacy DNA of Success by Greg S. Reid and Ben Haldeman and more authors. Today we are continuing with chapter 4 and we're talking about Carol Marzouk. Marzouk. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So, chapter 4 begins with Ben Haldeman continued his work, finding several people who shared their life mottos and stories of success. They all had one particular viewpoint in common. Being successful wasn't easy. That was their viewpoint in common. They learned lessons along the way and had to adapt to make it work. They were insurance brokers, real estate agents, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs. They liked to share success publicly online or in seminars. But once they opened up about the details of their journey, it became apparent they all had failures, setbacks, and unforeseen obstacles to overcome. Those were the pieces that made them real and relatable and not just influencers on social media. Ben consciously applied the 4 rhythms of relationships with the people he connected with. It's behind the with the compared to his small hometown in Pennsylvania, everyone from California was glamorous and covered in stardust. And he was unsure if he could successfully get them on board. After spending all day in front of the screen, he stood up, satisfied with his progress. Then he did a few stretches and got himself ready to spend the evening at a fundraiser. The animal shelter was hosting a fundraiser so they could purchase more supplies and build awareness for dogs that needed homes. Ben couldn't Ben entered the enormous outdoor restaurant patio. The space was filled with outdoor games like cornhole, Jenga, and an inflatable obstacle course. Through it all, there were puppies of all breeds walking around in volunteer vests that read, "Adopt me!" exclamation point. Ben couldn't help but think how Luna would react if she had been there. Not knowing anyone at the event, he paused to watch a cornhole tournament. When it was over, Carol, one of the opponents, approached him, asking if he wanted to play and was looking for a partner. Carol Marzouk introduced herself as the executive lion tamer and smiled as she watched his reaction. Carol didn't work with real lions, but her work was important and involved just as much excitement and drama. She explained that she assists companies by removing the toxicity from their culture while promoting a healthier work environment. As the youngest of 5 children, Carol asked if he had any children. As an only child, okay, let me see. Her childhood was wild and fun with many adventures Carol gave one example when her siblings tested the strength and safety of her stroller when they tried to throw it out of a ninth-story balcony, quote, just to see if it would fly with her in it. As an only child, this both intrigued and scared Ben. What were they thinking? Why did their parents allow it? He had no idea how to ask these questions politely. Most of Carol's stories were about defying her defying the odds. So she chose her own path, knowing that she would be the only one she'd have to answer to for the rest of her life. Carol had invested a lot of time in the corporate world and learned firsthand what it felt like to be around toxic lions who said all the right things but did the opposite behind closed doors. She wanted to help tame those lions so nobody would hate coming to work ever again, not even the CEOs themselves. Was she afraid of having a business that relied solely on her? Of course she was. Ultimately, she succeeded, and she reveled in telling the tales of each dragon she slayed and each lion she tamed. Even though Carol had been a stranger, Ben felt like he already knew her and was enjoying their conversation. Ben knew that Carol would become a pioneer with him leaving their legacies on the moon. What life lesson would you want to leave on the moon? Ben asked Carol, pen and notebook in hand. She took no time to think of an answer. Feel the fear and do it anyway, she announced with pride. This was the this was a familiar phrase to Carol, like a chant she repeated to herself. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. That's yin yang cheering. Carol Marzouk, she described the fear of going to college every day while living with her family who didn't know. These are the authors speaking, Greg S. Reid and Ben Haldeman. They're focusing on Carol Marzouk. She talked about the fear of working with executives who tried to undermine, demean, and destroy others, and she shared the fear of living with sisters who didn't want her to be born. Carol had embraced fear so many times she was now comfortable with it. We are reading Lunar Legacy, DNA of Success by Greg S. Reid and Ben Haldeman. This is 1724. This is She would even seek out things that scared her, just so she could turn them into opportunities. This lesson settled in Ben's chest, and he thought about fatherhood. The idea of facing his fears was unnerving, but maybe it could also be exciting. Ben chose to let that fear motivate him. It was important for him to model what he taught his daughter. He encouraged her every chance he got, telling her to, quote, choose big goals that inspire you and are a bit scary. Reach for the stars, Luna. Just imagine if you had the whole universe at your back and all the dots will magically connect for you. Go after a vision that is so big that it is worthy of your galactic power. He's doing he's doing a technical Chinese qigong, but I am talking about the book. Okay, back to Lunar Legacy. There was one fear Ben had overcome, Ben Haldeman, and it reinforced his belief that the best way to overcome fear was to force himself to do whatever scared him. And it worked. He now had Ken, Maris, and a new pioneer for Lunar Legacy, and that's Ken Ashby and Maris Siegel. New pioneer for Lunar Legacy, and he was encouraged that more people would join his project. Carol, he says, quote, Carol, within the grand tapestry of the universe, we hold we each hold a unique purpose. The earth itself, capital E, itself has a mission, and we as its stewards are entrusted with our own meaningful roles upon this planet. The moon will be our first launch, end quote, he stated. Next, he Quote, next, we might save a copy of Earth's DNA on an asteroid or on another planet. Exclamation point, end quote. Overall, Ben felt motivated by their encounter. Carol had boosted his spirits and made him more confident than ever that others wanted to expand their horizons beyond this world and into space. They could face the fear together and do it anyway. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. The beauty of the Lunar Legacy Project, capital L, capital L, capital P, was that it was ongoing and could continue to spread the seeds of humanity forever. Ben imagined people living on other planets in the future, and scenes from the Jetsons cartoon played in his head. Cars are self-driving, video calls are old news, humanoid robots are able to do many of the mundane tasks that humans now do. The possibilities are endless, and with concepts and ideas like this well within our reach. Ben loved envisioning what science would bring in the future, and, most important, how far people could go. The progress humanity has made throughout history is astronomical. Once upon a time, we invented the wheel. In the future, would Ben even need to teach his own daughter how to drive a traditional car? Maybe the cars of the future will fly like those of the Jetsons. Ben's vision was actually quite detailed. He envisioned a pyramid on the moon that contains a seed of Earth. His mission would be to back up Earth's biodiversity to protect all the species on the Earth for future generations. There would be a seed bank of plants to save a backup and a North Star mission of spreading life and consciousness to the stars. He saw this project as a human movement to preserve Earth and expand life outward. Ben hoped that inventions in the future would be positive for the betterment of the Earth and humanity rather than only serving to fatten a billionaire's wallet. He liked to believe that humans, as advanced and intelligent as they are, could make the world a better place, not only for each other now, but for future generations as well. Something is really killing my eye. Ay, ay, ay. Can't get it out. Since the project was taking off, it was the optimal time for Ben to get this information onto the SpaceX Falcon 9 before it launched, although he inherently believed that time and space are really an illusion. He often told his father that we live in a dream, that all is happening in this moment. This moment and this present experience is guided by everything that ever has happened or ever will happen everywhere in the universe, capital U. Every moment exists for a reason, and Ben truly felt he was meant to be a part of this movement, this moment. With his confidence sky high, Ben was ready to meet with the financial team. His idea required a thoughtful explanation in order to communicate clearly with so many logical thinkers. Thinking out of the box is one thing. Thinking out of this world is quite another. Ben was in the lobby preparing his speech for the team when a well-dressed businessman overheard him from the elevators. The man smiled at Ben and said, "Good luck," with genuine sincerity. If anything, this made Ben more nervous, as he wondered if this gentleman would be part of the team he was meeting. Sensing Ben's tension, he added, "I'm Brady Slack, a tax expert with High Country Finance. I heard some of your pitch, and it was pretty impressive. It sounds like you know a lot about space travel." "Thank you," Ben replied humbly. "The secret to these meetings, though," Brady offered, "is something my grandfather told me when I was first starting out." Ben looked puzzled as Brady continued. "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." Ben absorbed that statement and added with a wry smile, You need to come to space with us. Again, CPA, not astronaut. Brady took a moment to assess the situation he was in before his morning coffee even had a chance to kick in. Maybe you didn't hear the full pitch, Ben added playfully, before explaining that his mission was the first of its kind. Others may come along in the future, but only one can be first. Brady loved the idea. Ben bought him a fresh cup of coffee. Then they rode the elevator up together while Ben fine tuned his pitch. He added a personal touch, sharing how much he cared about getting a piece of himself to space. And thanks to Brady's recommendation, he was excited to send them DNA kits with additional questions in order to learn more about each individual and their unique qualities. Everyone would have their own legacy to leave behind. His childhood dream could be realized, and together they could turn it into a business by allowing others like Brady and Carol to do the same. We are reading Lunar Legacy by Greg S. Reid and Ben Haldeman, as well as all these people, all these other people, and we are trying to get wisdom. We are trying to get wisdom. Hopefully, that we all know the right things to do, because when we do the right things to do, we create virtue. We're going to make this world more full of virtue than ever before, with morsels of a thought of wisdom every day. Okay? Back to the book. Each participant would receive a moon kit with cheek swabs to collect DNA and experience to preserve their personal story and legacy. In addition, they would learn more about the Falcon 9 and Ben's mission to spread the seeds of humanity. They could then gather the results of the DNA test and put it on their digital storage piece. Ben loved the idea that a part of him would be whisked away into space to be among the stars. To create successful relationships with all of them, he knew it was important for people to know how much Ben cared and not just about how much he possessed. He could use the kits to reflect his passion for space and provide humans with the opportunity to expand beyond the bounds of this planet. Ben expanded his audience and inspired more people to think about leaving a piece of themselves for the future, reaching further than they ever could have imagined in their lifetimes. Ben also enjoyed learning about the origins of personal mottos and mantras that people were sharing and why they were so important to each individual person. The lessons that could be learned were never ending as long as they stayed curious. The scientist inside him was always asking questions like, how would these thought leaders continue to surprise him? Chapter 6. Ben browsed a local bookstore looking for a few children's science and space books to line Luna's bookshelf. He wanted to share his vision and project with her as much as possible. And to do that, he wanted to make sure she knew about constellations and planets and the enormous galaxy beyond. He was excited to teach his daughter about the things he loved: science, planet Earth, and the universe. Actually, he'd been doing that since she was born, reading to her from a collection of children's books, including one called Eight Little Planets. But he also knew that most of his child's scientific teachings and inspiration would come directly from himself. As he walked down the aisles, Ben spotted an author's signing table and a placard on top displaying "Meet Ken Rochon, Dr. Smiley." His mouth curled at the sides just reading the sign. Ben found Dr. Smiley shaking hands with a line of people and sharing an inspirational message from his latest book, "You Can Change the World," Ken announced to his guests. The author was accompanied by his son, who was beaming with pride as his father shared his wisdom. Ken had authored more than 40 books, so Ben was witnessing a father son moment that captured the essence of their personal relationship and journey together. My goal is to leave a legacy behind for my son so that he can be proud of and carry on. Ken declared Ben's ear Ken declared. Ben's ears perked up at the word legacy. He grabbed a copy of the book and introduced himself to Dr. Smiley. Ken was excited to learn about Ben's lunar legacy, but even more absorbed when Ben shared that he too was a father. Although Ken was not someone who offered advice about fatherhood, he was passionate about understanding the legacy Ben was trying to leave behind for himself, his child, and others. Ken shared with Ben that he and his son both wrote books, and his son even makes comic books. His son was amused to Ken, inspiring and motivating him on many of his projects, and in return, Ken encouraged his son to start following his dreams from a young age. I enjoy writing books, but I was actually a DJ for over 30 years, Ken explained, adding that through his many years of being a DJ, he had discovered the power of music as a universal language. Remember how Ken Ashby and Maris Segal said the same thing in their book, The R Factor? Anyway, same thing. Back to Lunar Legacy. Through his experience, Ken strongly believed that music could bring the world together in new ways, transporting people to a magical place of memories and dreams. Connecting people through his many different creative expressions was perhaps Ken's greatest gift. Ben was awe-inspired as he heard about Ken's multiple life lessons and counsel, Counsel, especially the way he encouraged his son to aim for the stars and publish his own works of art. What a novel and cool idea! Kids would love comics written by kids. Ben's heart warmed at the thought of how he could inspire his daughter. Who knew? Maybe she'd become an astronomer, an author, or an artist who would visit the moon herself one day and paint her first-hand perspective of the moon she was named after. Luna means moon in Latin and Spanish and other languages. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. Later, Destiny, capital D, told Ben how much she admired him for pursuing his dream. The Lunar's Legacy project is such a lofty goal, and you didn't let that stop you from diving right in. In that sense, I wish I were more like you, but I'm afraid that if I open my own business, I'd fail and lose everything I've worked so hard for, she sighed. Quote, I live in the here and now, the present moment. All is happening right now. Rather than being afraid of failure, enjoy the process and trust in every moment being part of your life. So we shall pause here in chapter 7 and we will come back to it later. I hope you have enjoyed this and that you are inspired to have a great day. I want us to know the right things to do and do them. Okay, we talk about virtue. Martin Van Buren, the eighth president, was from Kinderhook, New York. We get Old Kinderhook, which was his nickname, from we get okay from Old Kinderhook. So it's Old Kinderhook.